Hello, Genesis Conference. I have some post-annual conference thoughts for you. For those of you who were at annual conference, I think there's a collective sense that we know that God showed up in some perhaps expected ways and some unexpected ways as well. And as I have been processing that, I just want to share some thoughts with you. I think one important piece is that before annual conference, we called people to 21 days of prayer and fasting, and we asked people to skip a meal each day for 21 days. We sent out a prayer requests in our midweek memo and in our social media. I have no idea how many people were fasting and praying. I know I was, and I know other people were, but however many did, I think that was part of preparing the way for what God did at annual conference. And then while we were together, we had people praying throughout annual conference on site, but in a different room for annual conference. And I think prayer was something that really prepared the way. I also think we collectively came together with a clearer sense of desperation and need for God than I can ever remember. Part of that is coming out of the pandemic and the realities that our churches have faced. Part of that was the massacre in Buffalo, the mass shooting in Buffalo that had happened just earlier that week. And there was just this collective sense of our need for God. And I think that's an important piece of seeing God at work, is just recognizing we can't do it, but God can. And then when we gathered, the first thing we did was we had a time of praying for healing and for anything else. People could come up to a whole group of people who were prepared to pray. We worshiped all at the same time. And then we also opened the conference up with a love feast, a Wesleyan love feast. And that is a time when people have an opportunity to pray for one another, encourage one another, going up to individuals at a time all over the room, or to get things right with one another. At the annual conference, I mentioned that revival doesn't come until people are right with God and right with one another. And so I said, if you need to get right with somebody in this room, if you need to step out and make a phone call, if your church needs to get right with another church, then do it. Sometimes I come into churches and I'll hear somebody say, oh yeah, we don't work with that church because 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, this happened. And I said, even if you weren't part of that history, it's time to just find somebody from that other church and say, we're starting fresh. And for half an hour, we prayed, we worshiped, and we interacted in this way. And as I looked out, I saw people going up to people all over the room and making things right. And I've heard more people talk about that. They've said, this happened and this happened in this church and this church. I know I had people come up to me and say they were angry at me and they wanted to start fresh. And what a wonderful thing. And I think that place of saying we want to be right with God and right with one another was significant in how God's made his presence known at annual conference. One other piece that perhaps you've heard about and perhaps you haven't, but we started experiencing people getting physical healing at annual conference. I now know we have at least 4 people who experienced physical healing at annual conference. And this isn't the kind of thing where, somebody stubbed their toe and it feels better. These are the kinds of things where one person had had a frozen shoulder for years and was immediately healed. Someone else had double vision in one eye and has had that for quite a long time. Someone prayed, the vision cleared. We've had one woman who has been legally blind for a number of years and has a degenerative eye disease. Things are getting worse, and instead her eyesight has vastly improved and continues to improve. I mean, these are miraculous things, and there was a sense of God being there. So the reason I want to share these things with you is because I want every church in our conference to experience the presence of God in unexpected ways as well as expected ways. And so I would just encourage you to be diving into prayer and diving into that sense of an appropriate sense of desperation for God, and to be making things right with one another. Because as we make things right, then we allow God to work. We make a way for him to work. So I want to encourage you with this. I want to tell you, I'm praying that our churches see this kind of power of God in their midst, and just want to let you know that God is on the move in Genesis. Thanks.